ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमोत्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरम् योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षातात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिम्बतामज्जतव पवनचलनरोधात् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. One second. Thank you, Ma. Sorry, the battery on my laptop went down and it switched off. Sorry. In this Tuesday satsang from Ramanacentre Center for Learning, Bangalore, we have been listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham from the book Years in the Presence of Ramana, My Master, a book written by Mahakrishna Swami and published by Ramanacentre Center for Learning, Bangalore. After reading this week's paragraph, which we have been looking paragraph after paragraph from the chapter Ramana, My Master from Mahakrishna Swami, we will be meditating on the teachings given by Bhagavan followed by a 20 minutes practice of Atma Vichara. And then our President Sarada Akka would be contemplating on Atma Vichara as it has been done in Ramana Gita by Ganapati Muni. Ramana Gita, as we know, is a compilation of questions and answers, questions put to Bhagavan by devotees and the devotees of Ganapati Muni, and Bhagavan's answers to them, which has been compiled as Sanskrit verses by Ganapati Muni. And our president would be, Sarada Akka would be talking about that. And then finally we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. And this week's paragraph that we have been reading from is from the book Ramana My Master. We just have that paragraph. Just a minute, please. Sorry. When someone calls us and asks for us, we all have the tendency to say I, and in saying I, we automatically point to our chest. This is a spontaneous, natural form to point to where the consciousness of being is reflected. Because of this, Sri Ramana advises to feel the right side of the chest, but without definitions, without thinking. The whole technique of self-knowledge indicated by him consists of this. As it always happens, the most important thing are the most simple. The difficult thing is to put the teaching to practice. And it is difficult because man is complicated. It is not that the truth is complicated, too confused or abstract to be perceived, but it is because the thinking mind in each man is what induces him to imagine so and to be enslaved by temporary manifestation. For many, it may appear strange that only through this technique, in a certain way simple, can it be possible to find a solution for the fundamental problems of life. We meditated on this paragraph last week. In this, Mahakrishna Swami drives home a very simple point, that whenever we say I, or when we look at the question, who am I? There need not be any doubt about the I, because we know we exist and we very clearly say I. So he is saying that it is so simple, but because of our mind, the thinking mind, that means we affirm a lot of reality to the thinking mind, but not to that something which is very natural, the experience which is very natural. We want to give reality to all the things that we experience through senses, which is either mind, intellect, the body, but not to that which is direct. So he is saying here, the thinking mind makes something which is so simple very, very complicated, and thinks that the truth cannot be so simple, and that truth being so simple cannot be the solution to all our fundamental problems of life. But as more and more we inquire, and more, even though we use these senses, including the body, mind, ego, memory, and all the five senses, give that perception, the perception through those senses only as real. But the enquiry, to whom is this, who am I, eventually makes us recognize that these experiences sought from these five senses, which may be the pancha gnanendriyas, or the mind, memory, ego, including knowledge, all of these is basically, an indirect experience. But the I, the sense of I am, which is so natural at all times, is so simple, and therefore the enquiry, who am I, is so straightforward. And by remaining in our own natural pristine state as pure I am, we find out through the practice of self-enquiry that all the fundamental problems of life is simply addressed by being in that simple truth that we are. Continuing on that, this week we will look at the next paragraph. Bhagavan Sri Ramana teaches that we must be concerned in only seeking our real identity, the divine, for we are divine in essence. Man ignores himself as the supreme self and confuses his divine nature with the profane ego, with the thinking mind. When someone says I, what is meant by this? Who is really this I? From where does it come? If man wants to know the absolute truth, he first must enquire the basic knowledge of himself, that is, this I to which he constantly refers to. A very beautiful way, if at all we still want to rely on this ego and mind, the thinking mind, to find us answer about who we are, then the enquiry is the only way. We need to really question, what do I really refer to as I? Or where from this I thought comes? And then in that, we exhaust all these indirect experience, and also in the course of time, we'll come to know the reality as it is, because the reality always exists even when we claim that we don't know who I am, or when we know also. So it is always there. It is just that our reliance on these indirect ways of knowing through the senses, through the what they call in the traditional way the antakaranas, that is the mind, intellect, ego, memory, or even a concept that we hold on inside. All of that has to get exhausted, because one needs to recognize that the sense of I existing is so natural, and all of these data that comes from these other means are so indirect. And that recognition has to happen. The more and more we hold on to this indirect data or knowledge, the more and more we recognize that there is no sense of permanency in that. We may get some input, we may recognize one concept, we may understand intellectually one way, but sooner or later we see that it fades away, and then the old stupidity will come back. So therefore we will again have the doubts. Again we will read something. Again we will come up with a new concept. But what Bhagavan is making us recognize is that the sense of I, the sense of presence which is there with us so naturally, so direct experience, the consciousness knows its own existence. So there need not be any other lights to see it. So it is so simple, so much directly available for all of us at all times. But our strong reliance on the indirect way, because that's how we have been associated or grown up with. We have acquired all information only through the senses, through these antakarnas. So we believe that that is the only way that we will also get to know the truth. But the truth is the substratum. It is the most simplest thing that is available, on top of which all these things are superimposed, like the snake on the rope. So we need, until we let go, relying on the false idea of the snake, the rope, which is so natural, will not be seen. Therefore, the light has to be brought. And Bhagavan brings that light with the enquiry. He makes what we rely on, the antakaranas itself, to be used to inquire, who am I? And naturally, if we have piled up a stack of clothes, and we want to know on what is it piled upon, we need to remove all the clothes. And when we remove all of them saying neti, neti, not this, then the ground becomes naturally visible. The ground was there even when the pile of clothes were put on. It's not that the ground appeared suddenly. So then the recognition becomes clear that the ground is always there. There is no coming and going. No matter how many clothes are piled upon it, nothing happens to the ground. That recognition comes about very, very naturally. And then another shift with the grace of Bhagavan that happens is that because we have been inquiring, who am I, the recognition that I am the ground, or the truth, the self alone is the ground, and the self alone is everything, becomes very, very evident. Because all things, as Sarada keeps on asking us, what are thoughts made of? What are all our experiences made of? If we inquire, it is all made up of nothing but the same consciousness, the same existence itself. The ground itself, the clay itself is the pot. Therefore, we recognize more and more we inquire, as Bhagavan is teaching us here, that the self alone is. And it is so naturally, effortlessly available, because that is what we are. And by the grace, we start to identify ourselves with that. And we become watchful of not being carried away by the superimpositions of the antakarana and the senses. We become more and more relying on that simple truth, and that simple truth we start to find is the solution for all our fundamental problems of life. Just be. Summa iru, says Bhagavan. And being in that natural state, we know the whole movie, the scripted movie, keeps on happening. And Nandakumarji, in one of his sessions, were very beautifully saying that whatever we see in the manifestation, it is all in the past. If we see the sun, we are seeing the sun as he was 8 minutes ago. And like that, even if we are interacting closely with somebody else, he said that it's only what we are seeing of the light. And if we are seeing our own mind, thoughts, it is something which has already formulated in its seed form a few milliseconds before. So everything we recognize is already something from the past. But being the self aspect is the real being in the now. So, and that is the real solution for all that which is going to appear and disappear. That recognition becomes very, very clear. So we look into the next part next week with Bhagwan's immense grace, with which alone we have come to this most direct path, which reveals if we are so strongly relying on our antakaranas and senses, by inquiring to whom is this, who am I, Bhagwan moves our attention from the indirect superimposed identity to that which we verily are here and now. The who am I question, to whom is this, that questions all the inputs from the senses, makes us recognize all of this is for me. And when we further inquire who am I, it makes us move our attention from the wrong identity, the superimposed identity, the indirect way of what we think we are, to that which we verily are here and now. So the inquiry, who am I, is the most direct path to move us from the imagined to the reality which alone is here and now. With Bhagwan's immense grace, for the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichar. Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana Akka, I request Sarada Akka now to talk from Bhagavad Gita.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we in this part of the satsang are meditating on the verses of Ramana Gita, which is a compilation by Ganapati Muni of answers given by Bhagavan to different seekers of truth on varied subjects related to self-knowledge. We are on the 14th chapter of the 18 chapters, and this chapter is entitled Jivan Mukti. So, this was Vaidarbha who has been questioning Bhagavan, and Bhagavan has answered him that liberation is only of one kind. There are no differences in liberation. So, we were meditating on those verses. Steady abidance in the self, undisturbed by scriptural or worldly ideas, is Jivan Mukti. That's what Bhagavan says. Shastriyair laukikaischapi pratyayaira vichalita swarupe sudridha nishtha Jivan Mukti rudakrita. So the essence is abidance in the self. Abidance in the self here and now, while in the body. Sharirastham mukta bandham jivan muktam prachakshate mukti reka vidhaiva syat prajnanasya visheshatah. So Bhagavan says there is no difference in the kind of mukti, whether it is jivan mukti. Liberation is always of one kind only. In the next 3 to 4 verses, Bhagavan emphasizes this point in different ways. So he says, Brahma lokagato mukta shruyate nigameshu yaha anubhutau na bhedosti jivan muktasya tasya cha. He says the Vedas, they talk about people getting liberated when they go to Brahmaloka. And that experience is also one and the same. Anubhutau na bhedosti. So there is no difference in experience. Again, there is another kind of liberation which is like this, says Bhagavan. Prana samavaliyante yasyatraiva mahatmanaha tasyapyanubhavo vidvan netayorubhayoriva. If the self gets merged, if the jiva gets merged in the self at the time of death, that is also the same experience, because people in the scriptures, they talk of Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti, and Mukti which is got in Brahmaloka. Normally, if one does not get Jivan Mukti, if one does not get liberated while alive, the consequence according to the scriptures would be that one takes another birth. One gets reborn. One continues to be bound by the cycle of births and deaths if one does not get liberated. But there is a possibility of what is called Videha Mukti. And it is said by some people that at the point of death, there are studies in some other doctrines also, like Buddhism, about this experience which happens at the point of death. We have heard of some accounts of near-death experiences So what happens? Many people who go through near-death experiences, they say that we were very peaceful, it was beautiful, there's no problem, there is no fear. Then again we felt we have come back to the body. But according to those Buddhist studies, they say that this state of peacefulness, which is experienced immediately after death, will not last. After some time, one will get caught again by the rise of the latent tendencies. So when one gets caught in the rise of the latent tendencies, then birth and death will continue. However, they give one clue. They say that immediately after death, the jiva is in a state of detachment. So, it is advised by those Buddhist studies that when anybody dies, remain peaceful. Don't be disturbed. Remain peaceful to help that jiva. If that jiva has not got liberated while alive, that person can still have a chance to get liberated immediately after death. So keep an atmosphere, a peaceful atmosphere, a spiritual atmosphere around the dead person until that jiva is able to hold to the self and abide at that point of time. If that also doesn't happen, then what will happen is the jiva will be reborn. It will hold on to its previous tendencies and start the journey once again. So there may be Jivan Mukti, there may be Videha Mukti if that Jiva is able to hold on in that space to the self. Because what happens in such subtle experiences also, there are the famous writings also, Dying to Live or something like that. So famous books are there of experiences of people. And that book, I think, I do not remember the author, but I heard her speaking in some forward or some interview. So she says it was such a lovely experience. Before she died, she had some 12 or 16 tumors in her body. And they were all carcinogenic. And she was so much in pain and she died. And then she felt absolutely free, absolutely blissful. And she says she realized that that is God, and God is full of love, and there is no judgment at all. However, she says she became ill not because of any difficulty, not because others were mean to her. In fact, she had a loving husband, loving parents, everything. But she said she herself was such a bundle of anxiety. She herself was setting such goals for herself in terms of trying to achieve that she was never at peace with herself. And that is why she had become so terminally and painfully ill. But when she crossed over and she found that there is no expectation at all, God is so full of love that there is no expectation, and that is really love, and that is joy. And she came back to the body for some divine reason to tell people about this, to tell people don't hold on to your anxieties, don't hold on to all this. But if we ask ourselves, was she liberated? Did she get mukti either when she was in the body? No, she did not get. And then when she went through her post-death experience, did she get liberation? No, because she had an identity. Okay, she knew about the person who had left the body. And she thought to herself, why was I so anxious? Because my nature is full of love. And this is God. But then it is only a subtle identity which she experienced. A very beautiful, subtle identity which was being experienced. So even if we experience ourselves as pure love, When we say we experience ourselves as love, when we experience ourselves as light, there is an identity. So the crossing of all identities, because if there is no connection whatsoever with a body, how can there be any thought of an experience? There cannot be. If I am not the body, there cannot be sorrow or there cannot be joy for me. There cannot be anger or quietude for me because I am not the body. And all the mental experiences are connected to the I am the body idea. So, what is Jivan Mukti? Jivan Mukti is transcending the I am the body idea. So, whether one is in the body or whether one has just come out of the body but is still aware of the body and feels free from the body, the feeling of freedom from a body can only happen if one has a body identity. A denial of the body can only happen if one has a body identity. If one is not having a body, can one say, I am not the body? We cannot deny a body if we are not the body. None of us say, Bhagavan says, man does not say, I am man. Man also does not say, I am not a woman. Because there is no need, there is no doubt, there is no linkage. We don't tell ourselves every moment, I am not a table, I am not a chair, I am not a dog, I am not a butterfly. We don't tell ourselves that, right? We don't have to. We will never think of telling because there is no sense of linkage at all with any of those forms. So even if we think I am not the body, even if you think I am free of the body, it only means there is still identification with the body. So Bhagavan is saying liberation is total freedom from the body identity. And it can happen after the body has become dead. Or it can happen when you go to some other loka. You may go to any loka. Whichever loka you are in, liberation is the same, says Bhagavan. And it can happen while one is in the body. Liberation is of one kind only. So Bhagavan says, so even if somebody is good, somebody is a great sage, and somehow they didn't get Jivan Mukti, if their life force, that was what he says in the 6th verse, Prana Samavaliyante Yasyatraiva Mahatmanah. So if a person is very ripe, but they have not got Jivan Mukti, then at the point of, we can see in the case of some people, we feel very strongly. We say they have reached Bhagavan's feet. We can even see feel at the time of their death. Even sometimes when people, we can see when the body is lying there, we can feel strong sense of peace, even though the body is lying there. What does that indicate? Probably that jiva, though at the time of being in the body, had not merged with the universal spirit, on account of the sadhana, on account of the surrender, has merged. It could well be that way. So Bhagavan says, there also, if such happens, netayor ubhayoriva. There is no duality. They are not. It's not different from the earlier one. Why, says Bhagavan? Samyat swarupa nishtaya bandhahane cha samyata. The destruction of bondage, the destruction of ignorance is common to all. Anyone in any world, anyone at the time of dropping the body, or anyone liberated while alive. If one is liberated while in the body, it is called Jivan Mukti. But Mukti Reka Vidhaiva Syat. Mukti is always of only one kind. Vedastu Parabuddhigaha. It is only the onlookers who say, oh, this person got liberated while he was alive. That person got liberated at the time of dropping the body. It looks like that. Somebody else, maybe he has gone to Brahmaloka, he is getting liberated. Who is saying all this? Says Bhagavan. Not the one who is liberated, but the one who is seeing him, Parabuddhikaha, one who is outside. When there is no bondage, where is the question of saying, I have got Jivan Mukti, I have got Videha Mukti? When there is no I to say anything, no bondage. What does it mean, no bondage? It means there is no rising of the sense of I as an identity. So Bhagavan says, until the I rises with an identity, one must question it. One must ask, who is this I? Who is this I who is rising? And as Dileep was saying when he was reading out the teachings of Bhagavan, it is this. What is the I? Every other thought we know. We constantly know our thoughts. But who is the I? Whenever I say I am angry, anger I know, and my complete attention is on the anger. But who is the I? The I is not the anger. The I is not the sorrow. The I is not the joy. Then who is the I? So when we ask and turn back, then Bhagavan says, that is abidance, Swarupa Nishtha, he had told us, right? Right in the beginning. Swarupe Sudhridha Nishtha. That is Jivan Mukti. That is liberation. Absolute, unwavering abidance in the self. And this is Bhagavan's grace is there to make this a reality for every one of us. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri
Namo Ramana. Apara Satchit Sukhabarirashe Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami. Namo